He Alpha and D Alpha no one. O Manager Meng's men easily dealt with the hunters sent by the Divine Dragon hunting group near the Ghost Abyss, and then lowered the rope. Everyone followed the rope down to the bottom of the Ghost Abyss. Manager Meng left 2 people to guard the Ghost Abyss. After walking for a while, Manager Meng said with a fake smile, "Miss Shen, to tell you the truth, I'm a friend of Elder Zhou. Elder Zhou has a special jade token on him. I wonder if you can return it to me." Yun Chujiu knew that it was useless to deny it, so she took out Elder Zhou's jade token and handed it to Manager Meng. Manager Meng asked about the past again. Yun Chujiu's story was still the same, so Manager Meng believed her. He believed her because he felt that if they had found the inheritance prison and left safely, they must have obtained the inheritance. Since they had obtained the inheritance, there was no need for them to join the Heavenly Phoenix hunting group. Moreover, Zhen Meili had brought nearly 200 people to join the Heavenly Phoenix hunting group. It was impossible for all of them to pass the Legacy Prison's test. Therefore, there was only one possibility, and that was that they hadn't found the Legacy Prison at all. He couldn't help but despise them. Zhou was really trash. He had actually been killed in such a muddle-headed manner. He even had to make a trip here. Manager Meng did not make things difficult for Yun Chujiu because he felt that Yun Chujiu and Tu Ziji would not be able to escape from his grasp at all. They might still be useful in the future if he kept them for now. Manager Meng had his subordinates pick up quite a number of rippling flowers and then walk to the end of the Ghost Abyss. There were still many vampire bats perched on the black stone wall. The human elemental energy brought by Manager Meng was quite high and soon dispersed those vampire bats. Then, Manager Meng began to use the rippling flowers juice to smear the stone wall. Yun Chujiu watched from the side and was puzzled. From the looks of it, he should have some understanding of the inheritance prison. Since he knew that the skull was to be selected, why didn't he bring some scapegoats? Could it be that he also thought of a way to activate the skull with a talisman? Rho Alpha D Alpha and Nu Just as Yun Chujiu was thinking, Manager Meng's men had already finished smearing the rippling flowers juice. A round stone door appeared on the stone wall. Manager Meng took out a jade token and injected elemental energy into it. The stone door creaked and then opened. Manager Meng immediately let Yun Chujiu and Tu Ziji enter first. Seeing that there was nothing unusual, he led his men in as well. Yun Chujiu looked at the 3 large blood-red words, Legacy Prison, on the door and felt that life was really fucking amazing. She had actually returned. She wondered if the red skeleton was surprised to see her again. Was it pleasantly surprised? However, He Xinjiu was stunned to find that the 3 words, Prison of Heritage, did not turn into a red skeleton like the last time. Instead, there was no reaction at all. Yun Chujiu thought wickedly that the bone spirit could not have been angered to death by her last time, right? At this moment, the angry voice of the red skeleton came from all directions. You are the one who is fucking angered to death. Your whole family is furious to death. Manager Meng and the others were dumbfounded. Who was speaking? Could it be the Qi Ling of the Prison of Heritage? But why would the Qi Ling say such a thing? They immediately knelt on the ground in fear and trepidation, afraid that something was wrong. Yun Chujiu naturally would not kneel. Moreover, she already had nothing to fear. Outside, she was afraid that she could not kill Manager Meng and the others. It would not be good if any of them escaped. However, now that they were in the Prison of Heritage, although they did not officially enter, Manager Meng and the others could not leave either. At worst, she could just kill them all. Seeing that Yun Chujiu didn't kneel down, Manager Meng said coldly, Miss Shen, why aren't you kneeling? Aren't you afraid of being blamed by the Lord? Before Yun Chujiu could say anything, the red skeleton said angrily, cut the crap. I'm asking if you entered the Legacy Prison voluntarily. Manager Meng and the others were even more confused. Why was the weapon spirit of the Prison of Inheritance so unique and unique? It was the first time they had seen such a Qi Ling. They did not know that the previous incident was a great humiliation to the red skeleton. It was afraid that Yun Chujiu would make a scene, so it interrupted Manager Meng. Although Manager Meng and the others were confused, they still said, "We are willing to enter the prison of inheritance to accept the inheritance." Yun Chuzhou crossed her arms and stood at the side calmly. Although she could make a move now, she had to go in anyway. She wanted to see how Manager Meng would deal with those skulls. The red skeleton ignored Yun Chuzhou and Tu Ziji as if it didn't see them kneeling. A red light flashed in front of everyone. When they regained their sight, they had already arrived at the first level of the inheritance prison. A familiar smell and a familiar formula. Yun Chuzhi's eyes could not help but light up as she looked at those floating skulls. The red skeleton was most likely afraid that Yun Chuzhou would smash those skulls like golden eggs again. It said darkly, "I'll choose 10 skulls and activate them with elemental energy. After selecting 10 skulls and activating them with elemental energy, you'll be able to enter the next level." However, because that stinky girl and the bald lady beside her did not kneel just now, they don't have the qualifications to pluck the skulls. The red skeleton felt that it was simply too clever. This time, let's see how that stinky girl will harm its skulls. Manager Meng was deeply convinced by the red skeleton's words. He said to Yun Chuzhou, "You guys just stand aside and watch. Don't act rashly, or else I'll kill you." Yun Chuzhou smiled lightly and said, "Don't worry. We are both people who cherish our lives. We won't act rashly." Rho Alpha D Alpha and Nu Manager Meng felt that Yun Chuzhi's smile was somewhat meaningful. However, his mind was currently focused on the inheritance prison, so he didn't think too much about it. He commanded his subordinates to take out 10 skulls. He took out one of the skulls and placed it in the empty space. Then, he released an origin beast that looked like a saber-toothed gopher. The origin beast came close to the skull and placed its claws on the skull. After a loud sound, the origin beast was blasted into dust. Yun Chuzhou suddenly realized that he had used an origin beast to replace a human. However, she did not know how he controlled the origin beast. Did he use medicine or beast taming techniques? P Alpha and D Alpha. No one of the red skeleton was so angry that it was twitching. It said darkly, "Opportunistic, shameless." Manager Meng was scolded until his old face turned red. However, he still released the second origin beast. Soon, all 10 skulls were activated. His luck was not very good. None of them contained any treasures. They were all killer moves. Although the red skeleton was not happy, the rules were limited, so they could only teleport everyone to the second level. They were currently in a wilderness. The ground was covered in white bones. In the distance, they could vaguely see a blood-red river, which made people shudder. As Yun Chuzhou had come to the second level last time, she was not interested. She was thinking about how to quickly kill Manager Meng and the others. After all, the time on each level was limited, so they had to finish the battle quickly. At this moment, the red skeleton said, "Don't take the skulls first. I will give you an hour. You have to kill that stinky girl and bald lady first. Otherwise, you can forget about getting the inheritance." The red skeleton felt that he was too damn smart. He finally thought of a good idea of using someone else to kill her. The stinky girl was dead for sure. Although Manager Meng didn't know why the red skeleton gave such an order, he didn't dare to disobey it. Besides, these two people were no longer of any use to him. He could kill them if he wanted to. Thus, Manager Meng said coldly, "Sorry, Captain Zhen. Since the Lord has something to say, we can only send you on your way." The red skeleton impatiently roared, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and attack together." Although Manager Meng was a little stunned by the roar, he still waved his hand and ordered the 10 people behind him to attack Yun Chuzhou and Tu Ziji. P Alpha and D Alpha. No one of the corners of Yun Chuzhi's mouth curled up. She was originally worried that she didn't have enough time to deal with these people, but the red skeleton jumped out to help. How cute. Big brother too, go and wait at the side. I'll take care of them. Yun Chuzhou said with a smile. Tu Ziji knew that this guy was a pervert. He would only be a hindrance if he was here, so he quickly jumped out. Those people wanted to chase after her, but they saw Yun Chujio give them a sinister smile, and then threw the ghost talismans in her hands upwards. The floating skulls above were all activated by the ghost talismans with elemental energy, and the sounds of cracking, dripping, and screaming instantly interweaved. Before those people died, they only had one thought. Was this ugly freak crazy? She was also within the attack range of those skulls. Was she planning to die together with them? Their thoughts finally stopped there because they were either blown to smithereens or transported to the distant river of blood and turned into blood. In the distance, Tu Ziji shivered. Pervert, too perverted. She actually thought of such a brutal method. Not to mention 10 people, even 100 people would not be able to withstand such a brutal fighting method of hers. Rho Alpha D Alpha Nu manager Meng could not believe his eyes. That ugly freak actually had so many ghost talismans in his hands. Moreover, he had chosen to die together. It was normal for Manager Meng to think so. After all, those ghost talismans had activated several skulls. No one would be able to survive within the attack range. Manager Meng was stunned for a moment. Then, a trace of luck and joy welled up in his heart. Fortunately, he did not go forward. Otherwise, he would have lost his life. The joy was that no matter what, that ugly freak was already dead. The remaining person was nothing to be afraid of. He only needed to kill him again and the inheritance of the prison of inheritance would be his. However, in the next moment, he sat on the ground in disbelief. She was not dead. A person crawled out from under the thick white bones and bared his little white teeth at him. Manager Meng, they are already dead. Is there still any meaning in your life? Go down and accompany them. This time, not to mention Manager Meng, even the red skeleton felt that there was something wrong with its eyes. How was it possible? She was still alive. Manager Meng saw Yun Chujio walking towards him and hurriedly stood up, taking a few steps back. Yun Chujio spread out her hands. Why are you hiding? Don't worry, I don't have any ghost talismans on me anymore, so I won't blow up those skulls again. Come, let's spar. Although Manager Meng did not believe Yun Chujio's words, but thinking about it, his elemental energy was much higher than Yun Chujio's. As long as he finished the battle quickly and did not give her the chance to activate the ghost talismans, then he could get rid of her. Thinking of this, Manager Meng suddenly attacked, the treasured sword in his hand stabbing towards Yun Chujio's throat. Yun Chujio did not know whether she did not react or was scared silly. In short, she did not dodge. She stood there foolishly and was stabbed in the throat by the sword. Then, her body fell to the ground. Manager Meng was overjoyed. He did not think that he would be able to kill this wretched girl so easily. Now, he only needed to kill the Baldy and he could continue to pass the trial. The red skeleton also never thought that Yun Chujio would actually be killed so easily. It was happy, but at the same time, there was also a hint of disbelief. She actually died just like that. She had not died even after activating so many skulls just now, but now, she was stabbed to death by that idiot with a single sword strike. Right at this moment, Yun Chujio, who was originally already dead, turned into a corpse. She leaped forward, the treasured sword in her hand stabbing towards the still proud Manager Meng. Even in his dreams, Manager Meng never thought that a dead person could be resurrected. However, his elemental energy was much higher than Yun Chujio's. Even when he was caught off guard, he still managed to avoid the vital parts and only suffered minor injuries. You're not dead. Impossible. I've clearly cut off your throat. Manager Meng said in disbelief. Yun Chujio bared her little white teeth. I'm already dead. I'm a ghost now. As he spoke, he even mimicked a zombie and jumped a few times. In the distance, Tu Ziji's eyes twitched. At this point in time, he was still in such a leisurely mood. He was also convinced. Manager Meng, however, believed him. The main reason was that he had just cut Yun Chujio's throat. No matter what, she would not be able to survive unless she became a ghost. He took a few steps back in fear, his face pale. Yun Chujo could not help but wonder. Didn't they say that the Ghost Clan's people would be destroyed once they died? Why was Manager Meng afraid of ghosts? However, now was not the time to think about this. It was better to kill this old thing first. Thinking of this, Yun Chujo stabbed Manager Meng again. Although Manager Meng was very panicked, she gritted her teeth. Regardless of whether she was a human or a ghost, she could not wait to die. Therefore, she started to fight with Yun Chujo. Rho Alpha D Alpha and Nu Om. At this moment, 2ZG also rushed over and joined hands with Yun Chujo to deal with Manager Meng. Rho Alpha D Alpha and Nu Om thought the ghost talisman was drawn by herself. The talisman paper was also very expensive. Moreover, if there was a treasure inside the exploded skull, wouldn't it be a waste? Manager Meng discovered that 2ZG had actually hidden his origin energy. He said in a flustered manner, You are also from the Imperial region? 2ZG pretended not to hear him and instead increased his offensive. Seeing that the red skeleton was about to give her an hour, Yun Chujo directly pounced onto Manager Meng's treasured sword. Manager Meng was simply dumbfounded. How had he ever seen him collide with a treasured sword before? Wasn't this suicide? However, just as he was in a daze, 2ZG's treasured sword pierced his throat. Manager Meng knew that he couldn't live anymore. A thought flashed through his mind. Although he couldn't live anymore, that ugly freak was also dead, right? In the end, Manager Meng's eyes widened and he died with great doubt. That was because, before he died, he saw Yun Chujo calmly pull the sword out of her body. She was still alive and kicking. She was not human. Yun Chujo kept Manager Meng and the storage rings of those people. Then, she instructed 2ZG to help her remove the skulls. Last time, she did not get anything good. This time, she might be lucky. 2ZG looked at Yun Chujo who was busy activating the skulls. He could not help but wonder why the red skeleton did not move. He did not know that the red skeleton was shocked by Yun Chujo's perversion. Yun Chujo was lucky that she did not die when the skulls were activated. However, her throat was cut and her lower abdomen was stabbed. Logically, she should have died a long time ago. However, she was still alive and kicking. How was this possible? When the red skeleton came back to its senses, the skull on the second layer had almost been destroyed by Hei Xingjiu. The red skeleton grumbled, How insincere. I've blown up so many things, but I haven't found any treasures at all. Isn't this a scam? Fortunately, these ghost talismans are the property of my family, or I would have suffered a great loss. The red skeleton was half dead from anger, but it was still really curious, so it asked, Stupid girl, why aren't you dead? Yun Chujo rolled her eyes. Are you stupid? It's better to stay alive than to die. Why do I have to die? If you want to die, you can die yourself. Rho Alpha D Alpha and Nu Omit didn't mean that at all, but it wanted to ask her why she didn't die even after being stabbed in the vital parts. This stupid girl was deliberately trying to argue. At this moment, Yun Chujo activated the last skull on the second level. Seeing that it was not a treasure, she said impatiently, You too, let's go. Bone Spirit, there's nothing else to play on the second level. Hurry up and teleport me to another level to play. The red skeleton looked at the empty second level. It wanted to strangle Yun Chujo to death. However, as the weapon spirit, its combat strength was too weak. This pervert was not afraid of Qi Ling. It was worried to death. However, the red skeleton suddenly thought of an idea. It would trap the two of them on the second floor. When the time limit was up, they would only be teleported to the 18th floor. At that time, even if this ugly freak could pass the inheritance test again, she would have to give up the inheritance in order to save that Baldy. That way, it wouldn't have any losses. It was simply too smart. It must be the most intelligent Qi Ling in the ghost realm. Thinking of this, the red skeleton decided to play dead. It did not say a word, anxious to death that wretched girl. Seeing that the red skeleton did not move for a long time, Yun Chujo thought for a moment and understood the red skeleton's plan. She thought to herself that this bone spirit had learned its lesson. What should she do? Should I let it succeed in its plot? Should I enter the treasure mountain and return empty-handed? Rho Alpha D Alpha Nu Omsh had already been sullen the last time. This time, she had to get some good things back no matter what. However, how could she get the bone spirit to teleport her to another layer? Yun Chujo looked around. Finally, her gaze fell on the red river of blood. Big brother 2, be careful. I'll go over there and take a look. Yun Chujo pointed at the river of blood and said to Tu Ziji. Tu Ziji knew that this guy was a pervert and nothing would happen to him. Therefore, he nodded and said nothing. Yun Chujo strolled to the side of the blood river. The blood river was full of blood-red liquid and emitted a bloody smell. Yun Chujo shook her head. She really couldn't eat this thing. Otherwise, she could drink all the liquid in the blood river and the bone spirit would definitely show up. 80% of Guai Chao had some moral integrity now, so she did not clamor for Yun Chujo to drink the liquid. If the blood river did not work, how could she force the bone spirit out? Her gaze fell on the thick white bones on the ground again. Otherwise, why would she keep all the white bones? Unfortunately, ever since she arrived in the ghost realm, although the great void mirror had followed her, the ball of yarn had not appeared. Otherwise, she could have kept the white bones into the great void mystic realm. However, it was fortunate that she had dozens of storage rings in her hands. They should be able to hold them. Hence, this fellow began to store the white bones into the storage rings. Tu Ziji saw Yun Chuji's actions from afar. The corner of his mouth twitched. He knew that this fellow was a wild goose that had plucked feathers from wild geese. However, he had to get something useful. Why was he storing the white bones? Tu Ziji walked up to Yun Chujo and asked in puzzlement, "Little Jiu, why are you collecting these bones?" Yun Chujo raised her voice. She said with a smile, "Big brother 2, isn't there a bone spirit inside? I'll collect all these bones. When I go back, I'll use these bones to refine them into puppets. By then, we can beat up the bone spirit every day. Also, although these bones are not valuable, it's not bad to grind them up and feed them to that bastard. At that time, we can just treat it as feeding that bone spirit to that bastard." Brother 2, are you trying to say that these bones are white and that the bone spirit is red? It's fine. I'll just dye it with some dye. When the time comes, I guarantee that it'll be exactly the same as that bone spirit. The red skeleton's originally smug mood instantly turned into a burning rage. It roared fiercely, "Damned girl, stop. If you don't stop, I won't be polite." "Oh, you're not dead. I thought you felt ashamed to see me and committed suicide." Yun Chujo said coldly. "You're the one who's shameless. You're the one who committed suicide. You're the one who's shameless." The red skeleton was so angry that it didn't know what to say. Yun Chujo pinched her own face and said faintly, "See? I have a face, and I have a lot of meat. As for you, you really have no face." The red skeleton was instantly rendered speechless. Yes, it really did not have a face. It was just a skeleton. Where did it get a face? Bone spirit, let me tell you this. I have bullied countless Qi Ling, and people have given me the nickname, Qi Ling Killer. So, if you know what's good for you, just obediently give me some treasures, and I won't make things difficult for you. But, if you go against me, I'll come again in the future when I have nothing to do. Let's see who can outlast the other." Rho Alpha D Alpha Nu The red skeleton had never seen such a shameless person, and he actually dared to threaten it. It was really angered to death. The red skeleton said in a flustered and exasperated manner, "You're really boasting without fear of losing your tongue. Since you've said so, then you can just take those bones away. Do you think I'm afraid?" Yun Chujo spread her hands. "Bone spirit, I originally didn't want to do things so ruthlessly. Since you've said so, then I can only be unkind and unjust. If you don't care about these bones, then what if I destroy the blood river? The red skeleton was shocked. However, after thinking about it, she had no way to destroy the blood river. What was it afraid of? Therefore, it said darkly, you destroyed the blood river. You really overestimated yourself. Yun Chujo raised her eyebrows. You don't believe me? TSK, don't you think it's interesting for me to throw these bones into the blood river? If my guess is right, there should be a small amount of devouring water in it, right? Rho Alpha D Alpha Nu the red skeleton. It wants to strangle this pervert to death. It's so angry. She could think of such a perverted method. She was not human at all. Seeing that the red skeleton did not say anything, Yun Chujo picked up a bone and threw it into the blood river. Go! After throwing it, the red skeleton said to 2ZG, Brother 2, I have nothing to do. Come, let's see who can throw it farther. The red skeleton cried, Stop! Stop! You devil! You pervert! The red skeleton felt that its skull was about to explode. It was too infuriating. This wretched girl was full of bad ideas. She actually thought of such a wicked idea. She was right. Besides human blood, there was also a small amount of devouring water in the blood river. If Yun Chujo threw all the white bones into the blood river, the devouring water would be used up. Then, it would no longer have any tricks to threaten people. Yun Chujo smiled and threw another piece of bone into the blood river. She said, Cut the crap. Either give me the treasure or teleport me to another floor. Otherwise, I'll keep throwing it away. The red skeleton weighed the pros and cons. If she was sent to another floor, perhaps this stupid girl would come up with a more insidious way. Why not give her something to brush her off? When the time was up, she would be sent directly to the 18th floor. After that, she would get lost. Thinking of this, the red skeleton snorted coldly and said, All right, then I'll give you some good things. However, I'm not afraid of you. I just think that you're too ugly. Before the red skeleton could finish speaking, Yun Chujo threw a sack of white bones into the river of blood. P Alpha D Alpha No One O to ZG almost laughed out loud. With little Joe's looks, it would be against his heart for the red skeleton to say that she was good-looking. Yun Chujo clapped her hands and said, Stop talking nonsense, take out the things. Don't take out the junk or it's an eyesore, or I'll throw it into the river. The red skeleton was so angry that it fell apart again. How could there be such a shameless person in this world? It really wanted to cry. There was no other way. The red skeleton painfully gave Yun Chujo a few origin tools and a few bottles of medicinal pills. Rho Alpha D Alpha Nu Omian Chujo saw that the grade of the origin tools and medicinal pills were not low, so she lazily said, Although it's a little low, it's still passable. Forget it, I'm the most soft-hearted person. I won't lower myself to your level. Red skeleton, soft-hearted? It doesn't exist. What a black-hearted girl she is. Black as hell. The dark, sunless kind. The red skull racked his brains and finally came up with what he considered to be a very vicious solution. It picked a set of the most difficult inheritance test. It is certain that Yun Chujo will not pass the test. If you don't pass the test, you'll be killed. That's the power of the formation. She's dead. However, when it thought about how Yun Chujo did not die even after her throat was cut, it felt a little uncertain. However, wasn't there still that Baldy? Even if it could not kill the smelly girl, it would make her regret the death of her companion. The more the red skeleton thought about it, the more excited it became. It felt that time was passing too slowly. The red skeleton endured and endured until it finally reached the time to teleport Yun Chujo to the 18th level. It could not wait to teleport Yun Chujo and 2ZG to the 18th level. Yun Chujo and 2ZG had just regained their sight. They heard the red skeleton say proudly, Stupid girl, this time you won't be as lucky as last time. I helped you to carefully choose the content of the inheritance test. If you fail, you will be killed. Yun Chujo shivered. I'm so scared. I'm scared to death. Of course, the red skeleton knew that Yun Chujo was deliberately provoking it. It snorted and started the assessment process. 10 huge ghost talismans appeared on the stone wall. The red skeleton gloated and began counting down, 10, 9, 8. Chapter 4406. Why didn't she go to heaven? The red skeleton was very proud. Didn't a ghost talisman appear last time? Did that brat remember it? This time, 10 ghost talismans appeared at once. Let's see how she remembers them. Even if she had a photographic memory, she couldn't even see 10 ghost talismans in such a short time. 2ZG's head buzzed. It was over. No matter how abnormal little Jill was, she wouldn't be able to pass the test this time. Before 2ZG could regain his senses, the red skeleton had finished counting the 1. Then, more than 100 ghost talismans appeared on the stone wall. Now, find the 10 ghost talismans that appeared just now. If one of them is wrong, you will fail and be killed, the red skeleton said gloatingly. It seemed that it had already seen that wretched girl's frightened look. It really vented its anger. Just as the red skeleton was thinking about it, it heard Yun Chujo say clearly, the second from the right of the first row, the eighth, the third from the right of the second row. Yun Chujo quickly told it the location of the 9 talismans, and it was all correct. The skull of the red skeleton fell to the ground. It was impossible. How could she be right? However, there was still one more card. She must be wrong. She must be wrong. 2ZG was also very nervous. He clenched his fists. Victory and defeat depended on this one move. The last card is the 9th row, the red skeleton almost laughed out loud. The 9th row? It was clearly the 3rd row. The stupid girl was going to be killed. That bald lady would not live either. It was great. However, at this moment, Yun Chujo said, it was a slip of the tongue. The last one is the 4th from the right of the 3rd row. The red skeleton was so angry that it almost died. What slip of the tongue? She did it on purpose. Could a slip of the tongue make the 3rd row into the 9th row? She just wanted to play with it, pervert. Even though the red skeleton was unwilling, it could only announce, you have passed the first test. Now, the second test begins. After the red skeleton finished speaking, 2 pieces of talisman paper appeared in front of Yun Chujo and 2ZG. There was a ghost talisman pen and a porcelain bottle of dye used to draw ghost talismans. Draw any 2 ghost talismans that appeared just now. The time limit is 15 minutes. After the red skeleton finished speaking, it almost laughed out loud. It felt that it was too despicable. Drawing 2 ghost talismans in 15 minutes was an impossible task. This was the most perverse test in the ghost talisman inheritance. The red skeleton felt that it was awesome and was so happy that it wanted to sing. In contrast, 2ZG's eyes were dull. There was only one thought in his mind. He was dead for sure. Little Jill was a pervert and probably wouldn't die, but he was a real normal person. He would definitely die thoroughly. At this moment, 2ZG saw Yun Chujo take his ghost talisman pen. She held a ghost talisman pen in each of her hands. Then, she took a deep breath and started drawing on the talisman paper with her left and right hands. 2ZG rubbed his eyes. She actually wanted to draw ghost talismans with both hands. How could she complete it? One had to know that the 10 ghost talismans were very complicated. Not to mention drawing with both hands, even if she focused on drawing one, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens to complete it in half a minute. The red skeleton curled its lips. Of course, this fellow did not have lips. It only moved its upper and lower jaw. It thought to itself, this ugly freak is really daydreaming. Drawing them with both hands. Why isn't she ascending to the heavens? She is overestimating herself. It was already difficult for her to draw one, yet she was drawing two at the same time. It was likely that she had no other choice. Before she died, she wanted to give it her all. TSK, this ugly freak was finally going to die. It was truly wonderful. Chapter 4407, she had really ascended to heaven. The red skeleton was now certain that Yun Chujo would not be able to complete it. It was nervous and excited, and its entire skeleton was trembling non-stop. Today was really a good day that was worthy of being recorded in the annals of history. After a while, the red skeleton saw that the talisman that Yun Chujo was drawing was actually not burned and destroyed, and she was still continuing to draw. It was a little flustered, but when it thought about it, humph. That ugly monster must be drawing other ghost talismans randomly. However, this ugly monster was quite capable. It could actually draw with both hands at the same time. But, so what? Wasn't there still no way to pass the test? It was so pitiful. When it thought about how the ugly monster was going to die, it wanted to secretly lie in bed and laugh out loud. Ha ha ha. The red skeleton finally made it to the end of the competition. Almost at the same time, Yun Chujo put down the two ghost talisman pens in her hands. When the red skeleton saw Tu Ziji's dazed expression, even his lips trembled slightly. He was even more certain that Yun Chujo had not completed the test. Just as he was gloating over Tu Ziji's misfortune, he saw the symbol that signified that he had passed the test light up. What? Impossible. There must be a problem with the array formation that had been in disrepair for a long time. Why was there a problem at this time? Damn it. Just as the red skeleton was feeling frustrated, it heard Yun Chujo say with a smile, "Bone Spirit, are you asleep or dead asleep? Hurry up and announce the results and pass the inheritance to me." The red skeleton said angrily, "What are you shouting for? Do you really think that you passed the second round of the test? This is because the array formation has been in disrepair for a long time and there is a problem." Yun Chujo sneered, "Of course I've passed the second round of the test. It's useless even if you act like a scoundrel. Hurry up and pass the inheritance to me." The red skeleton was so angry that it was laughing. This ugly freak was really thick-skinned. Fine, then she would have nothing to say. Immediately, the red skeleton rolled up the two ghost talismans on Yun Chuji's table and stuck them on the stone wall. Then, it displayed the 10 ghost talismans on the stone wall. It said fiercely, "Look at it yourself. What the hell are you drawing? Are they the same? That bald lady, she's blind. Are you blind too? Look, are they the same?" Although Tuziji was very dissatisfied with the red skeleton calling him bald lady, now was not the time to care about this. With a trembling voice, he said, "The third and the seventh on the right are exactly the same as little Nine's drawing. They are exactly the same." The red skeleton sneered, "You guys are really like a nest of snakes and rats. A pair of blind eyes. And you talk like you have a nose and eyes. How are they the same?" The red skeleton's words suddenly stopped because it saw that they were really the same. They were the same. The red skeleton immediately fell apart. Tu Ziji saw that the red skeleton had stopped talking halfway and asked Yun Chujo, "Little Nine, why isn't that Qi-Ling moving?" Yun Chujo curled her lips. "It's most likely falling apart again." When the red skeleton heard the conversation between the two, it finally came to its senses. It felt that the entire skeleton was in trouble. The ugly monster had really gone up to the sky. She had actually succeeded in drawing it, using her left and right hands to draw it. And it was fucking middle grade. This was simply impossible. The red skeleton finally managed to reassemble its scattered bones, but because it was in a trance, it put its head on the wrong side. It announced with difficulty, "The second round of assessment was successful." But, how did you do it? Chapter 44082 Ziji also wanted to ask the red skeleton's question. How did little Joe do it? Admittedly, her talent was very amazing, but how did she memorize the 10 ghost talismans in such a short time? Not to mention that she even drew two of them. Yun Chujio revealed a sinister smile. Bonehead? You want to know? I won't tell you. Do you think it's infuriating? The red skeleton, it was going crazy. Bone spirit, if you give me some benefits, I'll tell you. Otherwise, you'll be troubled by this problem for the rest of your life. Just thinking about it makes me feel uncomfortable. Hey Shinjo smiled like a wolf with a big tail. The red skeleton fell apart again. Shameless. Too shameless. It had never seen such a shameless person. She had already extorted so many good things from it, yet she still wanted to extort it. Did she have no conscience at all? However, this ugly monster was right. If it did not get an answer today, it would be troubled by this question for the rest of its life. Therefore, it could only give Yun Chujio a low-grade heaven-grade origin artifact painfully. Now, can you tell me? Yun Chujio put the origin artifact into her storage ring. She said with a grin, "You're really stupid. You'll believe me if I tell you? I'm not going to tell you. I'll let you be tortured by this question for the rest of your life. You'll be in so much pain that you want to bang against the wall every day." When you think about it, that scene is really beautiful. The corner of 2ZG's eyes twitched. He lit a candle for the red skeleton. It was really unlucky to meet little Joe. The red skeleton roared angrily, "Stupid girl, you are shameless. You are shameless. You are not human. You will die a horrible death." The red skeleton felt that any vicious words could be used to describe this stupid girl. Unfortunately, it could only scold her with these few words. Yun Chujio, on the other hand, laughed crisply. She laughed very happily. "How about this, you give me the inheritance and send both of us out safely. I will tell you the reason. How about it? Don't even think about it. Either you give up on the inheritance, or you leave this bald lady alive. It's impossible to get the best of both worlds." The red skeleton finally found some confidence and said fiercely. Yun Chujio sighed faintly. "Bone spirit, do you think I can't deal with you? Last time, it was because there were too many people, so I couldn't be bothered with you. You want to do this to me again today? Then you really have the wrong idea. Let me tell you, if you don't agree with me today, I will come back alone after I leave. When that time comes, I will be able to successfully take the inheritance." The red skeleton did not doubt the possibility that Yun Chujio had mentioned. Even if she left empty-handed this time, she would definitely come back again. It really had no idea what to do. However, was she going to give in just like that? It seemed a little embarrassing. "Bonehead, if you agree to my conditions, I'll tell you why I passed the ghost talisman test. Moreover, the ghost talisman inheritance has to be passed down sooner or later. Are you going to keep it as a cub?" Yun Chujio pouted and said. The red skeleton paced back and forth on the spot. Should she agree to it? However, it was too sullen. It suddenly stopped and thought of a good idea. Therefore, it sighed and said, "All right, I'll agree to it. You tell me the reason why you passed the ghost talisman test, and I'll pass the inheritance to you. Also, I'll let this bald lady leave with you." Chapter 4409, The Little Fairy Who Can't Die. Yun Chujio's eyes flashed when she heard the red skeleton's words. "You're not lying to me, right?" The red skeleton swore, "Why would I lie to you? Didn't you already say it? If you return empty-handed, you'll come again next time. I can't afford to offend you." Yun Chujio nodded. "All right, then I'll tell you. The reason why I was able to quickly remember those ghost talismans and draw them with both my hands was because I was a genius. A genius that only appears once in 10,000 years. Ha ha ha. The red skeleton, it just couldn't beat her. Otherwise, it would definitely tear her into pieces, cut her into pieces, dismember her into pieces, grind her bones and scatter her ashes." While the red skeleton was fuming with anger, it heard Yun Chujio continue, "Of course, this is only one of the reasons. The most important thing is, didn't more than 100 talismans appear in the first round of the assessment last time? I remembered some of them. When I went back, I would draw them for fun when I had nothing to do. Coincidentally, many of the talismans in your assessment this time are ones that I have already practiced, so I managed to do it. 2ZG finally understood when he heard that. Even so, the talismans that appeared last time only appeared for a short while. She was really a pervert. The red skeleton was also very surprised. This ugly freak was really powerful. However, immediately after, it began to cackle and almost laughed its jawbone off. After laughing for a long time. Only then did it say arrogantly, "Smelly girl, you've been tricked. Now that I know the reason why you passed the test, it'll change to another batch of ghost talismans next time. At that time, you definitely won't be able to pass and will be wiped out by the array." Ha ha ha. Do you know what this is called? This is called giving someone a taste of their own medicine. Unless you want Baldy to die, you can only give up on the inheritance. You're destined not to receive the inheritance. What's that saying again? Right, you're trying to get nothing out of it. How pitiful. The more the red skeleton spoke, the more proud it became. Just now, it was being bullied by Hei Shinjio, and now, it was being arrogant. It felt that this sense of accomplishment was 100 times better than when it tricked those ignorant fools. No, 10,000 times. It was too fucking satisfying. 2ZG sighed. He originally thought that the red skeleton was a fool, but he did not expect it to have such a mind. This time, little Jio had suffered a setback. At this moment, he heard Yunchujo chuckle. "Bone Spirit, are you very proud? Do you feel happy that you lied to me?" "Of course, darn girl, do you think you can defeat me? I was just teasing you previously. In this inheritance prison, I am the ruler. Those who enter this prison can only listen to my arrangements. Those who oppose me will not have a good ending," the red skeleton said domineeringly. Yunchujo curled the corners of her lips. "Do you think that if I come alone next time and fail the inheritance test, you can kill me? You are really naive. You still don't know, right? I'm a little fairy who can't die. Your so-called killing is of no use to me at all." The red skeleton's heart thumped. It recalled that Yunchujo did not die even after her throat was cut off. However, it also thought that the array formation was much more powerful than that. It did not believe that it could not kill her. Yunchujo seemed to have guessed the red skeleton's thoughts. She chuckled and her body turned into countless purple light spots. First, she turned into a stone table, then a ghost talisman pen, then a wisp of mist, and finally, a red skeleton. Chapter 44:10 was never to be seen again. The red skeleton looked at the red skeleton that looked exactly the same as itself and suddenly felt that its entire body, no, its entire skeleton was in bad shape. She was not a human. How could she change at will? No wonder she said that she was a little fairy that could not die. Since she could change at will, how could she die? Unless there was something that could lock her spirit, there was really nothing she could do. And although it had a lot of treasures, it coincidentally did not have anything that could lock her spirit. Yunchujo saw that the red skeleton did not say anything, and she was slightly relieved. She was also betting that if the red skeleton really had something that could lock her spirit, then she could only give up on the inheritance. "Bonehead, did you see that? You still have the nerve to call me ugly just because you look like this? Hurry up and give me the inheritance, or I will come and teach you a lesson every day." The red skeleton said with a stern face but a weak heart, "HMPH, it's just a small trick that can be changed at will. I'm too lazy to argue with you. Otherwise, if you activate the spirit locking formation, you will remain like this for the rest of your life." After saying that, the red skeleton wanted to rip off its own skull. Why did it feel like it was scolding itself? "Yo, you are quite self-aware. I don't have time to waste with you. Hurry up and give me the inheritance," Yunchujo said lazily. The red skeleton was at its wit's end. It knew that it couldn't do anything to Yun Chujio if it continued to waste time. It could only reluctantly throw Yun Chujio a sheepskin scroll with the words, 1,000 Talisman Records, written on it. Yun Chujio frowned. This is the inheritance you were talking about. The inheritance is just a lousy book. Shouldn't there be countless treasures? No matter how bad it is, there should at least be a good ghost talisman pen, right? Humph. What a greedy snake swallowing an elephant. This 1,000 talismans contains over 1,000 ghost talismans. What you see in the assessment are only low-level ghost talismans. Any high-level ghost talisman inside is worth 1,000 gold coins. The red skeleton said snappily. The ghost talismans used in the inheritance assessment had to match the elemental energy level of the person being assessed. Otherwise, the red skeleton would have long used the more difficult ghost talismans to make things difficult for Yun Chujio. Yun Chujio blinked her eyes. From what you said, it seems that this lousy book is not bad. However, since this place is called the Inheritance Prison, there shouldn't only be one type of inheritance, right? You can also release a flock of sheep. Why don't you just give me the other inheritances? No. There's nothing left. There's only one kind of inheritance in the prison of inheritance. The red skeleton was so angry that it almost fainted. It had never seen such a shameless person. That's not right. If there's only one kind of inheritance, then where did the pills and origin tools in the skull come from? Yun Chujio blinked her eyes and asked. The red skeleton immediately had a bad premonition, so it forcefully teleported Hei Xinjiu and 2ZG out without any explanation. Yun Chujio's shout could still be vaguely heard, "Bone Spirit, I will come back. I will definitely come back." The red skeleton could not help but shiver. No, it would rather spend more yuan stones to leave this place. Otherwise, that wretched girl would definitely empty the inheritance prison. Therefore, when Hei Xinjiu hopped back from the swamp, she was stunned to find that the original black rock wall no longer had vampire bats. Instead, there was a row of crooked words written on it, "Ugly monster. Never again." Yun Chujio, good, very good. Bonehead, pray that you don't meet me in the future, or I will turn you into a pile of bones. Chapter 44:11 changed the plan. Hei Xinjiu cursed the red skeleton dozens of times before instructing 2ZG to scrape off the words on the cliff wall. After a while, 2ZG saw that Yun Chujio's expression had become a little better, so he asked, "Little Jiu, there are still 4 people from Manager Meng above Ghost Abyss. What should we do next?" Yun Chujio rolled her eyes and quickly transformed into Manager Meng's appearance. "Hide first. I'll trick 3 of them down and then kill them," Yun Chujio said to 2ZG. 2ZG nodded and thought to himself that little Jiu's ability to change at will was too abnormal. If not for the shackles of the spirit-locking formation, she would probably be able to fly into the sky. Yun Chujio told 2ZG to hide well while she got some blood on her body. Then, she staggered to the edge of Ghost Abyss. When the people above heard the shouting, they immediately asked, "Leader, are you injured? Where are the others?" Yun Chujio sighed, "Don't mention it. Not only did we not find the inheritance prison, but we were also besieged by some high-level origin beasts. Almost all of our brothers died, leaving only 3 seriously injured ones. I really can't bring them here alone. One of them is left above, and the other 3 will come down and help me bring them here." Those people did not suspect him and immediately 3 people came down along the rope. Yun Chujio brought the 3 people to the place where 2ZG was hiding. Suddenly, she thrust her sword at one of them. That person did not expect that Yun Chujio would sneak attack him. He was immediately stabbed and died. The other 2 people cried out in shock, "Leader, you. Yun Chujio naturally would not waste her breath on them. She immediately joined hands with 2ZG to attack the 2 people. In the end, Hei Xinjiu killed one of them at the cost of 2 more bloody holes on her body and captured one alive. Yun Chujio interrogated him and obtained some information. However, this person's identity was low, so she did not know much. Manager Meng was naturally not a manager. He was a team leader of the second team of the Royal Hunting Group, and the previous Elder Zhou was the deputy team leader. Manager Meng did not receive any news from Elder Zhou for a long time before he brought his men and rushed to the flat field. What made He Xinjiu angry the most was that according to what this person said, Manager Meng wasn't going for the inheritance at all, but to obtain something. As for what it was, he didn't know. He Xinjiu secretly hated in her heart. That damned bone spirit, he really lied to her. In the end, seeing that there was nothing to ask, Yun Chuzhou killed the person with a sword. She went to the edge of Ghost Abyss again, found an excuse to go up and kill the remaining person, then dragged Tu Ziji up. Little Jiu, are we going back to the Heavenly Phoenix hunting group now? Tu Ziji asked. Yun Chuzhou thought for a moment and said, originally, I planned to first establish myself in the Ping domain and then enter the Imperial region with the matter of offering the rippling flower. But now that Manager Meng has tracked us down, if I enter the Imperial region again and offer the rippling flower, it'll be walking into a trap. So we have to enter the Imperial region in another way. Another way? What way? Tu Ziji asked, puzzled. Go back with your original identity. In any case, all the people with you are dead. No one will expose your lie. Wasn't there a woman with you back then? I'll transform into that woman's appearance and join the Royal Hunting Group with you. But your elemental energy level is too low. Also, your spirit soul is different from hers. What if we expose ourselves? Besides, it's been so long. How are we going to explain it when we go back? Tu Ziji said with a frown. Chapter 44:12 was too thin to be human, that's easy. Just say that we were seriously injured at that time and were trapped in a place by that ancient tree. It wasn't easy for us to escape. Other teams have also failed their missions, so although they will be punished, they won't do anything to us. Besides, since I'm seriously injured, it's normal that my spiritual sense is damaged and I can't summon my spirit. Then, well, just act according to the situation, Yun Chuzhou said. Anyway, she had the identity document of that woman, and they looked exactly the same. As long as she was careful, there wouldn't be any problems. Tu Ziji saw that Yun Chuzhou had made up her mind and knew that it was useless to persuade her. He asked, what about that short fatty? Are we just going to leave him in the Heavenly Phoenix hunting group? Yun Chuzhou curled her lips. Don't worry. That guy cherishes his life the most. Even if he doesn't have us, he can still keep his life. At the very least, he can still escape back to the base area. Let's first find a hidden place and let your hair grow out. Then you can lose weight. It's best if you're so skinny that you can't even look human. This is in line with the saying that we've been trapped for a long time. Tu Ziji, so skinny that you can't even look human. He felt that in the following period of time, he would be living a life worse than death. This pervert was really convenient. With a casual change, he could become skin and bones. He was about to suffer a death sentence. In the following period of time, Yun Chuzhou and Tu Ziji found a hidden valley. Yun Chuzhou was busy cultivating and increasing her elemental energy, while Tu Ziji was busy, growing hair and losing weight. After a month, Tu Ziji relied on the hair growth pills and body slimming pills that Yun Chuzhou concocted and turned into a skinny pole with long hair draped over his shoulders as he wished. Yun Chuzhou used all sorts of threats and rewards to entice Big Brick and the other foodies. She made them show mercy and even made them spit out some elemental energy. Finally, they rolled and crawled to raise their elemental energy to the first level of the Yuanzun stage. This fellow felt good about himself. He asked Tu Ziji confidently, what level is your Royal Hunting Squad's elemental energy usually at? Tu Ziji looked at Yun Chujia's confident appearance and slowly said, the second level of the Yuanxing realm. Yun Chuzhou, this fellow counted with his fingers. Was he even 10 levels lower than the Royal Hunting Squad's dregs? Instantly, that little bit of self-confidence was reduced to nothing. However, when this fellow thought about his abnormal physique, he immediately became lively again. The woman that Yun Chuzhou was pretending to be was called Qing Luo. She was not bad looking, but now, she was skinny and had lost some of her beauty. The two of them relied on their identity documents to smoothly enter the imperial region. However, everyone that they met looked at Yun Chuzhou with disdain. After all, the weakest cultivation in the imperial region was at the 5th level of Yuanzhuan realm. A few days later, the two of them finally arrived at the Imperial Hunting Group's headquarters. The Imperial Hunting Group's headquarters was located in the eastern suburbs of the imperial city. Firstly, there was rich vitality here, and secondly, it was convenient to protect the imperial city. Although Yun Chuzhou was blind, Tu Ziji was originally a member of the Imperial Hunting Group, so he was naturally familiar with the place. After the two of them checked the identity document, they went straight to Tu Ziji's 5th Squad's 2nd Squad. As the Royal Hunting Group had a large number of people, even if there were hundreds of people in a group, it was no wonder that Old Zhou and Manager Meng could not recognize Tu Ziji. The two of them first met with Captain Luo of the 2nd Group, and then they were brought to Captain Qi of the 5th Group. Tu Ziji told him the story that Yun Chuzhou had taught him. He Xinzhou was very good at fabricating lies, so even after Captain Qi interrogated him for a while, he did not find any flaws. Chapter 44:13 And the Fate of the Big Kitchen. Captain Qi looked at Tu Ziji and Yun Chuzhou's skinny appearance and believed them even more. He frowned and said unhappily, "A bunch of trash." Both the soul-devouring tree and the spirit-seizing tree failed to complete their missions. How am I going to explain this to the higher-ups? Seeing that the two of you have brought back some useful information, the death penalty can be avoided, but the punishment cannot be escaped. Without a year's salary, Tu Xiaojiu was demoted from a 3rd-grade hunter to a 4th-grade hunter. Qing Luo, your elemental energy is too low right now. You are no longer suitable to be a hunter. Go to the big kitchen and become a servant. When your elemental energy increases, you will become a hunter. Hey Xinzhou, did she have a fate with the big kitchen for 3 lifetimes? Why was she always sent to the big kitchen? Although she was complaining in her heart, she still thanked them profusely on the surface. After all, her elemental energy was indeed too low right now. She reckoned that following them on missions would be a burden. After Captain Luo brought the two out, he ignored them and directly turned around to leave. During this period of time, Tu Ziji had already told Yun Chuzhou some of the matters related to the Royal Hunting Group, so Yun Chuzhou also knew most of it. However, Tu Ziji did not expect Yun Chuzhou to be punished to be a slave. In addition, he was a hunter, so he had only heard a little about the big kitchen and did not know much about it. He only heard that the big kitchen was very messy. He sighed and said in a low voice, "Let's go. I'll take you to the big kitchen. The big kitchen is very messy. Be careful." Yun Chuzhou curled the corners of her lips. They should be the ones who should be careful. Tu Ziji thought about it and agreed. Whoever provoked this little pervert would be courting death. Seeing the big kitchen of the 5th team from afar, Yun Chuzhou let Tu Ziji go and strolled to the big kitchen. At this time, the big kitchen was preparing lunch. Besides the sound of cutting vegetables and cooking, there were also sounds of arguing and laughing. When they saw Yun Chuzhou enter, everyone looked at her. "Yo, isn't this the cold beauty of our 5th team? Why is she free to wander around our kitchen today? It's not time to eat yet. TSK, how did she become so thin? It's impossible not to be loved by others. What do you think of me?" A fat man said with ill intentions. Yun Chuzhou had heard from Tu Ziji that Manager Zhang of the big kitchen was a big fat man with a pockmarked face. He was probably the one she was talking about. "Manager Zhang, Captain Qi asked me to temporarily work in the big kitchen. Can you arrange a job for me?" Yun Chuzhou said lightly. Since she was a cold beauty, she could be cold and aloof. Anyway, it was fine as long as the gigolo was as usual. She was guaranteed to be an ice-cold beauty. Thinking of de-biming, He Xinjia's heart froze. A few months had passed, but the pretty boy had still not made any movements. Was he going to choose a spirit soul, or was he going to give birth to a spirit soul? Why was it taking so long? Just as she was thinking about it, she heard Manager Zhang say with an evil look on his face, "Let you work in the big kitchen." TSK, could it be that your elemental energy has decreased, so you are punished to be a servant? The work in the big kitchen was all menial, dirty, and tiring. A delicate and beautiful woman like you couldn't do it. How about this? If you serve me well, you don't have to do any work in the future. You just need to enjoy life. Yun Chuzhou said indifferently, "There's no need. You'd better arrange other tasks for me." Chapter 44:14 The mute girl. A trace of anger flashed across Manager Zhang's face. However, after thinking about it, he was not afraid that she would not obey him in the future. Hence, he snorted coldly, "Since you don't know how to appreciate favors, then the task of cutting firewood in the big kitchen will be handed over to you from now on. Mute, bring her to cut firewood." Upon hearing Manager Zhang's words, a woman with red spots on her face walked over. She gestured twice at Yun Chuzhou, indicating to follow her. Yun Chuzhou had heard from Tu Ziji that there was an ugly mute woman in the big kitchen. As she had nowhere to go, she became a servant in the big kitchen. Manager Zhang saw that she did not want a salary. As long as she had food and a place to live, she was allowed to stay. Moreover, the arrangements were all dirty and tiring. That mute woman might really have no place to go, so she stayed even though she had been bullied in the big kitchen. Along the way, neither of them spoke. The mute girl could not speak, while Yun Chuzhou was absent-minded and kept thinking about the gigolo. The Jiguan mountain where they were going to cut firewood was about 10 miles away from the campsite. From afar, it really looked like a jiguan. Soon, the two of them arrived at the foot of the mountain. As the royal hunting group had been stationed here for a long time, the firewood at the foot of the mountain was all gone, so the two of them could only walk into the mountain. After walking for a full 2 hours, they finally saw the sparse trees that could be used as firewood. The mute girl took out her machete and began to chop. It was clear that she had no intention of communicating with Yun Chuzhou. Yun Chuzhou said with a smile, "Miss, my name is Qing Luo. Please take care of me in the future." The mute girl's face stiffened. She thought to herself, hasn't this Qing Luo always been very cold and arrogant? Usually, she didn't even look at the servants, so why was she so lively now? Although the mute girl was shocked, she didn't stop moving her hands, as if she didn't hear Yun Chuzhou's words. If an ordinary person was ignored like this, they would have tactfully kept quiet. However, He Xinjiu was never a tactful person. She was holding a machete and chopping wood as she smacked her lips. "Missy, I don't know what your name is, so I'll just call you that from now on. Missy, it's actually quite good to come out to chop wood. At least you don't have to face those bastards, right? Missy, has anyone praised your posture when chopping wood? Missy, why are you walking so fast? Wait for me." The mute girl wished she could shut He Xinjia's mouth. Why did Qing Luo turn into a chatterbox? The mute girl was annoyed by Yun Chuzhou, so she stuck her machete into the ground and took out some dry food to eat. Yun Chuzhou went over and said shamelessly, "Miss, is it really okay for you to eat by yourself? Shouldn't you give me half?" Finally, a crack appeared on the mute girl's expressionless face. She gritted her teeth and threw a bun to Yun Chuzhou. Yun Chuzhou ate happily. Even though the kitchen was filled with smoke, the steamed bun was not bad. From that day on, He Xinjiu followed the mute girl up the mountain every day to chop wood. Every time, Yun Chuzhou would be the one making noise. The mute girl would occasionally show a hint of an expression. Yun Chuzhou cursed silently in her heart. This mute girl was simply calm. It was almost the time when the pretty boy was having a fit. However, there was one thing that Yun Chuzhou was sure of. This mute girl had a secret, a big secret. Yun Chuzhou carefully observed the red spots on the mute girl's face. They were not natural at all. Instead, they were dyed with a special medicinal liquid. Chapter 44:15 was as lively as a rabbit if one ignored the red spots on the mute girl's face. Her appearance was extremely beautiful. It was much more beautiful than in Kingluo's body. This was not much. Perhaps she had disguised herself as ugly to protect herself. However, Yun Chujo discovered that the mute girl's bearing was extremely noble and elegant when she was eating. It was obvious that she came from an extraordinary background. Moreover, she suspected that the mute girl was not mute at all. Hence, the question arose. Why did she pretend to be dumb and ugly and insist on suffering in the royal hunting group's big kitchen? One had to know that even if the two of them were to chop wood together, they would still need to wait until sunset to finish. One could imagine that she had been busy until very late before she could return to the camp. While Yun Chujo was observing the mute girl was also observing her. She felt more and more that Qing Luo was different from before. She was like a completely different person. Of course, in front of everyone, she was still a cold beauty, but in front of her, she was lively, like a rabbit. Manager Zhang originally thought that if he let Yun Chujo suffer for a few days, she would obediently submit. However, seeing that 3 or 4 days had passed and she still had no intention of yielding, he could not hold himself back. On this day, Yun Chujo and the mute girl came back to chop firewood. Manager Zhang stopped Yun Chujo and said, "Qing Luo, don't go back to your residence first. Come to my tent. I have something to ask you. If you have something to say it here. If you don't say it, I'll go back." Yun Chujo said coldly. Manager Zhang was so angry that he gritted his teeth. He could not care less about pretending anymore. He said in a flustered manner, "Qing Luo, I'll tell you the truth today. I like you. You have to obey me even if you don't want to. If you don't listen obediently today, I can only use force. Your current elemental energy is only at the first layer of Yuanzun realm. I can subdue you with one finger." The others in the big kitchen were either gloating or had nothing to do with them. Only the mute girl's eyes flashed with a faint trace of worry. "How about this, Manager Zhang? Why don't we have a competition? If you lose, stay away from me. If I lose, I'll listen to your arrangements. Do you dare?" Yun Chujo said indifferently. Manager Zhang revealed a happy expression. He felt that Yun Chujo was looking for a way out for herself. In his heart, she was already planning to give in to him. The reason why he thought this way was very simple. Yun Chujo was only at the first level of Yuanzun realm, while he was at the 7th level of Yuanzun realm. There was basically no suspense in this competition. "Sure, no problem. How do you want to compete?" Manager Zhang asked impatiently. "As you know, my soul consciousness is damaged, so I can't summon my spirit soul. Therefore, neither of us is allowed to adapt to the spirit soul. Do you agree?" Yun Chujo had 10,000 ways to kill Manager Zhang silently. However, she didn't want to cause any trouble since she was new here. However, since he was courting death, she would teach him a lesson. Manager Zhang agreed without hesitation. Even if he didn't use his spirit soul, he felt that victory was within his grasp. Thus, the two of them started fighting in the open space in front of the big kitchen. Everyone thought that Manager Zhang would win without any suspense, but they didn't expect Manager Zhang to be as stupid as a pig. He was so tired that he was panting, but he didn't even touch Kingluo's clothes. In the end, he was even kicked into the mud by Yun Chujo in a moment of carelessness. Everyone didn't dare to laugh and endured it very hard. Everyone thought to themselves, no matter what, this Qing Luo used to be a third-grade hunter. Although her elemental energy was damaged now, her foundation was still there. It was still not easy to provoke her. Chapter 44:16 Who exactly is she? Manager Zhang originally wanted to show off his tender feelings for the fairer sex, so he did not use any weapons. Now that he saw that Yun Chujo was not to be trifled with, he angrily took out his large saber and slashed at Yun Chujo. Yun Chujo was unhurried. She took out Kingluo's treasured sword and fought with Manager Zhang. Previously, Tu Ziji had specially taught Yun Chuzhou the sword technique that Ing Qing Luo usually used, so Yun Chuzhou was not afraid of being exposed. However, when she used the swordsmanship, she would occasionally modify it, and the power of the swordsmanship would increase greatly. A moment later, Manager Zhang's legs, arms, and body were pierced with more than 10 holes, but none of them were fatal. Even if the pain was as painful as a pig's cry, it would not kill anyone. When Yun Chuzhou saw that he had completely lost the ability to resist, only then did she coldly say, "Manager Zhang, although I've been punished to be a slave, as long as my elemental energy recovers, I'm still a third-grade hunter. I'm not someone that a fool like you can provoke. In the future, if you provoke me again, I'll directly kill you." After saying this, Yun Chuzhou directly turned around and left the big kitchen. A faint light flashed in the mute girl's eyes. She silently left the crowd and returned to her residence. The two of them had low statuses, so they shared a tent. When the mute girl entered the tent, she saw Ing Qing Luo, who was still as cold as a killing god, munching on melon seeds. When she saw her enter, she bared her little white teeth. "Little sister, how was my performance just now? Was it very domineering? Was it very xian-er?" Although the mute girl did not know what xian-er meant, it did not stop her from understanding that Yun Chuzhou was showing off. The corner of her mouth twitched slightly. Could this Ing Qing Luo be a lunatic? Why was she the same before and the same after? Moreover, there was such a huge difference. After a while, the mute girl was probably too curious, so she dipped her hand into the water in the cup and wrote on the table, "Aren't you afraid that Manager Zhang will take revenge on you? He is a distant relative of Captain Qi." Yun Chuzhou curled the corner of her lips. "Miss, it's not useful to just avoid things. Even if I don't teach him a lesson, do you think he will let me off?" The mute girl's expression froze. After a while, she continued to write, "Then what if he takes revenge on you?" Yun Chuzhou shrugged her shoulders. "I'll take it as it comes. At worst, I'll just kill him and leave this damned place." Yun Chuzhou thought to herself, Captain Qi was now in a terrible state due to the failure of the mission. How could he have time to deal with a distant relative? Seeing that Yun Chuzhou was not afraid, a hint of envy flashed across the mute girl's eyes. She wiped the water stains off the table and returned to her seat. Yun Chuzhou's heart moved slightly. The mute girl's handwriting was delicate and meaningful. It was obvious that she had practiced calligraphy. Moreover, she deliberately wrote with clear water to prevent anyone from recognizing her handwriting. Who was she? The next day, Manager Zhang did not come to work, and there was no other news either. Yun Chuzhou and the mute girl went up the mountain to cut firewood as usual. A few days later, Yun Chuzhou and the mute girl went to Jiguan Mountain to cut firewood again. Unexpectedly, when they were about to return to the camp in the evening, they were blocked by 4 people. The leader was Manager Zhang, and the other 3 were the servants in the big kitchen. Manager Zhang's face was full of viciousness. "Bitch, if you refuse a toast, you'll be forced to drink a forfeit. Today, no matter what, I'll deal with you. Mute, there's nothing for you here. Get lost." After saying that, Manager Zhang turned to the 3 people behind him and said, "Take this bitch down. There will be benefits for all of you. Go." Chapter 44:17 Happy Feud. The mute girl looked at Yun Chuzhou worriedly, but she still quietly bypassed Manager Zhang and the others and walked down the mountain. Manager Zhang snorted in disdain, "Bitch, did you see that? Mute is so tactful. If you are as tactful as her, I promise to let you have a good life." Yun Chuzhou curled the corners of her lips. "Why are you talking so much nonsense? Didn't you want to kill me? Let's attack together, a group of trash." Manager Zhang said exasperatedly, "Bitch, do you still think you're the insufferably arrogant Ing Qing Luo from back then? The 3 of you, don't just stand there, come on." The 3 servants were usually Manager Zhang's lackeys, so when they heard that, they charged towards Yun Chuzhou. Manager Zhang's face was filled with an evil smile. Soon, This bitch knew what would happen if she offended him. Just as he was feeling pleased with himself, he heard a gust of wind behind his ears. He hurriedly dodged to the side. Although he staggered for a moment, he managed to dodge the attack from behind. He focused his eyes and saw that it was actually the mute girl. He could not help but curse, "Are you tired of living, mute? Didn't I tell you to get lost? How dare you attack me? Are you courting death?" The mute girl was expressionless. The machete used to chop wood in her hand slashed at Manager Zhang once again. Manager Zhang was simply angered to death. It was fine if that slutting Qing Luo did not listen to him, but this mute who had submitted to him had actually rebelled. He was really courting death. Manager Zhang pulled out his large machete and fought with the mute girl. Manager Zhang originally thought that he would be able to kill the mute girl in a few moves. Who would have thought that even though the mute girl's elemental energy was one rank lower than his, she actually fought to a draw with him. This was because the mute girl usually kept chopping wood, while Manager Zhang lived in luxury. Regardless of whether it was experience or stamina, he wasn't a match for the mute girl. Manager Zhang was extremely flustered and exasperated. However, he thought that when those three people finished dealing with that slut, they would naturally come over to help. At that time, he would reward this mute to those three people to play with. Just as Manager Zhang was thinking, he heard a miserable cry. He used the corner of his eye to look and saw that a servant had already collapsed on the ground and died. What surprised him more was that there was a big brick on Nkingluo's head. Didn't they say that Nkingluo's spiritual sense was damaged and she couldn't summon a spirit soul? Why did she summon it again? Besides, Nkingluo's spirit soul was a spirit crane. How did it turn into a big brick? The two people who were fighting with Yun Chujiu couldn't help but panic when they saw that one of their companions had died. Especially when they saw that Yun Chujiu's chest had been stabbed by a sword and she was still fighting with them. How was this possible? If it were an ordinary person who had been stabbed in the chest, not to mention fighting, they would probably lose their lives. How could she be fine? Yun Chujiu did not have the time to waste with them. Very quickly, she killed the two men at the cost of a few more holes in her body. Then, she walked to Manager Zhang, who was fighting with the mute girl. Manager Zhang looked at Yun Chujiu, who was like a god of death, and his legs suddenly felt weak. He said, You can't kill me. If you kill me, the captain will not let you go." Yun Chujiu laughed lightly, "You still talk so much nonsense on your deathbed. Shut up." She immediately joined hands with the mute girl and killed Manager Zhang. Yun Chujiu put the 4 corpses into her storage ring and then looked at the mute girl with a smile. "Little sister, I knew you wouldn't ignore me. Isn't this feeling of gratitude and revenge wonderful?" Chapter 44:18, Yun Kai who helps others. The mute girl opened her mouth and finally asked hoarsely, "What should we do next?" Perhaps because she had not spoken for a long time, the mute girl's voice was very hoarse. Yun Chujiu raised her eyebrows. Was she not going to pretend to be mute with her? However, it was also true. The two of them were now in the same boat, so they naturally would not worry too much. Cover up the bloodstains and traces of the fight here, then throw their bodies to Demon's Grimace in front. Don't worry, no one will care whether these idiots live or die. They'll be fine in a few days, Yun Chujiu said indifferently. The mute girl nodded, and together with Yun Chujiu, they covered up the bloodstains and traces of the fight on the ground and then came to Demon's Grimace. The ghost's grimace was located on the north side of the crest mountain. It was a bottomless valley with clouds and mist surrounding it. It was impossible to see what was underneath. However, it was said that the royal hunting team had sent a team down to investigate, but none of them came back alive. Hence, no one dared to think about coming here again. Since the royal hunting team did not dare to come to this place, the others naturally did not dare to come. Hence, there was basically no one here. It was suitable to be used to destroy the corpses. Yun Chujiu threw the 4 corpses in her storage ring down. Just as she was about to leave with the mute girl, a large brick floated out from between Yunchujia's brows. Then, she aimed it at Yunchujia's back. Hei Shinjo did not expect that her own spirit would plot against her, so she fell straight into Gue Jiancho. While the mute girl was stunned, the large brick knocked her off Gue Jiancho. As Yunchujo was falling, the first thought that flashed through her mind was, damn that huge brick. Luckily, she could conjure, or she would have fallen to her death. Hence, she conjured herself into a bird and realized that it was fucking forbidden to fly here. She quickly conjured herself into a wisp of mist and slowly descended. However, she soon heard the mute girl's scream and had no choice but to transform into a huge cloud, supporting the mute girl as she slowly descended. The mute girl did not know that the cloud was Hei Xinjia's illusion. She could not believe her eyes. Oh my god, she was saved by a cloud. When she was about 10 feet away from the ground, the cloud suddenly became smaller and the mute girl fell to the ground. However, such a distance would not hurt her anymore. Yunchujo took the opportunity to transform into Qing Luo and landed on the ground. The mute girl looked at her in surprise. Qing Luo had landed earlier than her. Why was she landing later than her? However, her mind was completely focused on the cloud just now. Her eyes were sparkling as she said, I was saved by a cloud just now. Are you the same? Yunchujo shamelessly nodded. Yes, me too. The clouds here like to help others. The mute girl looked up, but she couldn't tell which cloud was the one that had saved her. However, she saw the big brick floating down proudly. Yunchujo saw the big brick showing off and was so angry that she hacked at it with her sword. You dumbass. Are you planning to kill your master? I'm going to chop you into a mahjong card today. Unfortunately, the big brick was so fast that Yunchujo could not hit it at all. Moreover, it felt that it had not played such a game for a long time. It was so happy. The mute girl was speechless as she watched from the side. What kind of master would have the same kind of spirit? However, it was rare for a spirit to be so agile. Who was this person who was pretending to be Qing Luo? Chapter 44:19 The identity of the mute girl. Although the mute girl was very curious about Yunchujia's identity, she did not inquire about it. Instead, she looked at the surrounding environment. The 4 corpses that they had thrown down earlier had already been smashed into pieces. Other than that, there were also some scattered bones on the ground. Some were human, and some were origin beasts. Other than that, there was nothing unusual about it. It seemed that it was no different from other valleys. However, she knew that this was just a facade. After all, this was the place where even the royal hunting group did not dare to come down. Hei Shinjo chased after the brick for a long time. She could not do anything to the brick, but she was so tired that she was panting. The mute girl stopped her, pointed at the top and said, How do we go up? Yunchujo stopped chasing after the brick and looked up with a frown. She could turn into a cloud and float up, but what about the mute girl? Although turning into a cloud could slow down the mute girl's falling speed, it was difficult to bring her up. Although there was a rope in her storage ring, it was too high and the rope was not long enough. Yunchujo looked around and found some vines growing on the cliff wall. She walked over and tugged at them. She found that they were very strong and her eyes lit up. She could use these vines to pull the mute girl up. Miss, come here. Let's cut some vines. Although the mute girl did not know what Yunchujo was planning, she still came over to help cut the vines. Yunchujo could not hold back her curiosity and asked with a smile, Miss, we can be considered friends through thick and thin. Shouldn't you tell me about yourself? Maybe I can help you. The mute girl's hand froze. Perhaps it was because she had been suppressing herself for too long, or perhaps it was because Yunchujo was the only person who had shown her kindness. Her eyes were slightly red, and there was a shimmering light in them. She hesitated for a moment, but still said slowly, You might not believe it, but I am Princess Mei Yan. Yunchujo was stunned. Princess Mei Yan. Is she the Princess Mei Yan who is going to marry the crown prince of the Yan clan? The mute girl revealed a hint of mockery on her face before she shook her head. I am not the Princess Mei Yan that you're talking about. Yun Chujiu was confused by what she heard. What did she mean? The mute girl's expression was very complicated at this moment. There was resentment, helplessness, and a hint of confusion. She said in a hoarse voice, "Do you know? Although my mother passed away after giving birth to me, I have been doted on by my father ever since I was young. Among the many princes and princesses, no one has a higher status than me. My father even gave me the royal hunting group." When the mute girl said this, she had a faint smile on her face. It was obvious that she was thinking of those carefree times. However, hatred suddenly burst out from her eyes. I always thought that I was very happy. How would I know that these so-called happiness were just cruel cloths to cover up the shame? When the mute girl said this, she started to sob softly. Then, her cries became louder and louder until they finally turned into bawling. Yun Chujiu did not try to persuade her. Sometimes, it was a good thing to be able to cry. However, she was afraid that if she could not even cry, her heart would really die. After a while, the mute girl regained her composure and said in an even more hoarse voice, "I suppose you have also heard of Princess Mei Yan?" Yun Chujiu nodded. "Is she that shameless Princess Mei Yan who pestered the Lord relentlessly?" "Oh right, since you are the princess of the royal family, you must know the cause of her death. Did she really die for love? Why do I not believe it?" Chapter 44:20 Princess Mei Yan. The mute girl was filled with grief and indignation. Her anger was instantly dispersed by this fellow's words. This was the first time she had heard someone use such a disdainful tone to talk about Princess Mei Yan. The others were all praising Princess Mei Yan. However, she had to admit that this fake Qing Luo was indeed different from the others. Perhaps she could really help her. Yun Chujiu saw that the mute girl was stunned and urged, "Why are you stunned? You haven't answered my question. Did she really die of love?" The mute girl came back to her senses and sneered, "How could a person like her die of love? What a joke." The mute girl did not continue this topic. Instead, she changed the topic and said, "The ghost race is different from the human race. The human race can reincarnate, but if the ghost race dies, their soul will dissipate. They don't even have the chance to possess and can only disappear completely. However, there are still exceptions. Humans normally have 3 souls and 7 spirits, but occasionally, there are people with 4 souls and 7 spirits. Even if such people die, they can reincarnate and be reborn. Another situation is to use an evil technique to temporarily seal one's primordial spirit. Then, one can find a junior who was born on the same day, the same month, the same day, and the same time to possess. This way, one can be reborn." What the mute girl said was very new to Yun Chujiu. It was the first time she heard such a statement, and she had a vague guess. The mute girl revealed a trace of hatred and continued, "When Princess Mei Yan knew that she was about to die, she used sorcery to seal her primordial spirit, but she said that she was going to die for love. It's so funny. How could a selfish person like her die for the sake of Xingzun?" Hearing the mute girl's words, Yun Chujiu heaved a sigh of relief. Although she did not care, if Princess Mei Yan really died for debeiming, she would feel a little uncomfortable. The royal family has an ancestral motto that is only passed down to the emperor. That is, no matter the cost, once Princess Mei's birth date is compatible with Princess Mei Yan, she must be carefully nurtured to prepare for Princess Mei's possession. When my mother was pregnant with me, father was ecstatic because he found out through a pulse test that she was pregnant with a girl. Furthermore, the estimated date of birth was extremely close to Princess Mei's birth date. However, my mother took action in advance. Father was afraid that I would be born prematurely and miss Princess Mei's birth date, so he ordered someone to pour medicine into my mother to delay the delivery time. That medicine was extremely harmful to the human body. Although mother gave birth to me, she died on the spot. In order to conceal the truth, all the imperial physicians and palace maids present were beaten to death. When the mute girl said this, her eyes turned red as she looked at Yun Chujio. She said hoarsely, "So, it's all because of me that mother was killed by them. Those innocent imperial physicians and palace maids were killed by them. I shouldn't have survived in this world." Yun Chujio could understand the mute girl's feelings very well. Back then, because she was kind and soft-hearted, she didn't kill Zhuo Piaoyu and almost harmed her grandfather's family. However, she also fell into this self-loathing and self-hatred emotion. She said faintly, "You can blame yourself, and you can understand your guilt. But the culprit of all this is not you. If you want to redeem yourself, then kill those people who harmed others." The mute girl shook her head. "I do want to kill them, but I'm too weak. I have no way to take revenge, so I can only stay here and struggle." "Come, let's finish talking about the matter and then talk about revenge," Yun Chujio said faintly. Chapter 44-21 4 Souls and 7 Spirits. Because of Yun Chujio's interruption, the mute girl calmed down a little and continued, "I didn't know anything about my mother's death. I thought it was just an ordinary difficult labor. Although the princes and princesses in the imperial palace ostracized me because I didn't have a mother, my father has always doted on me. I feel quite happy." The mute girl laughed self-deprecatingly. "It's ironic, isn't it? I've always lived in a cage that they had carefully constructed. How would I know that all they wanted was my body? The other princesses were getting married one after another, but father, on the grounds of loving me, did not allow me to talk about marriage for a long time. He did not even allow me to have any contact with any men. I had always thought that father really doted on me. Later, I found out that Princess Mei Yan would only succeed in possessing me if I remained a virgin. One day, I would finally wake up from my dream. 3 years ago, on the 15th of July, they finally revealed their original ferocious faces. After I was drugged, I was brought to an underground palace in the imperial palace. When I woke up, I was horrified to discover that I was in a blood pool. The blood was the blood of infants who had not even reached the age of 1 year. They were simply so cruel that it made one's hair stand on end. In my great fear, I saw the shadow of a woman. She coldly said that she was very satisfied with this shell. She was even very satisfied with the name. Hee. I now know that when my father first came up with the name, there was a deep meaning behind it. Mei Yan and Mei Yan were so close and so ironic. When the mute girl said this, she seemed to recall what happened that day. Her body trembled slightly. Yun Chujio took out a cup of hot water from her storage ring and handed it to her. The mute girl took a few sips before she continued, "I begged my father and Princess Mei Yan to let me go. However, they told me the cause of my mother's death and said that I was a jinx. It was because of me that so many people died. While I was in a daze, Princess Mei Yan took over my body. I lost consciousness and fell into darkness. I thought that I would definitely die, but I didn't expect that the heavens would not kill me. I was actually born with 4 souls and 7 spirits. After I woke up, I discovered that although I didn't have a body, I didn't die. I was afraid of being discovered, so I quickly hid. Fortunately, I grew up in the imperial palace, so I was very familiar with the terrain and hid in the imperial palace for a period of time. However, for the sake of safety, I still carefully slipped out of the imperial palace and found a hidden place in this coxcomb mountain. I was in constant fear. A month later, I actually condensed my body again, and it was exactly the same as my original body. I was afraid of being discovered, so I used the juice of the red stalk grass to smear red spots on my face. Then, I pretended to be mute and entered the royal hunting group. I entered the royal hunting group firstly to protect myself, and secondly, that Princess Mei Yan would occasionally come to the royal hunting group. I wanted to find an opportunity to kill her to avenge my mother. Yun Chujio did not expect the inside story to be so complicated. Princess Mei Yan was actually born out of Princess Mine's possession. No wonder the royal hunting group was mostly looking for things like stealing other people's souls. It was probably used to increase Princess Mine's strength. After all, her primordial spirit had been asleep for so long and her strength had dropped drastically. If she wanted to become stronger in a short period of time, she would have to take the wrong path. Then the question came. Why did Princess Mei Yan marry the crown prince of the Yan clan? Did Aog know Princess Mei Yan's true identity? Chapter 44:22 Little Uncle Yun Chujio was thinking about it when the mute girl said self-deprecatingly, "Am I dreaming? A good-for-nothing like me can't even protect myself, let alone kill Princess Mei Yan and my father. However, I have no other choice but to rely on myself. If nothing happened to my maternal family, perhaps I could still have a shelter. However, how could my father leave such a hidden danger? When I was 5 or 6 years old, my father randomly found a crime to pin on my maternal grandfather. My maternal grandfather's family has either died or been exiled. I reckon that all of them have died." Yun Chujio casually asked, "Your maternal grandfather's family was very powerful in the past?" A trace of pride appeared on the mute girl's face. "My maternal grandfather and my first uncle were all members of the royal hunting group. Furthermore, they were once captains. Back then, when it came to the matter of killing the family's sons, everyone had to give a thumbs up." Yun Chujio's heart skipped a beat. Surnamed Sha. It couldn't be related to Sha Wuhan, right? Sha Wuhan had a sheepskin scroll that was used to make ghost talismans. He was quite against the royal hunting group and his way of handling things was obviously different from the people of the lower realm. Moreover, she could see that he also had a grudge against them, but he was just unable to take revenge. Even so, Yun Chujio still felt that it couldn't be a coincidence. However, after thinking for a while, she still asked, "Do you know Sha Wuhan?" The mute girl suddenly grabbed Yun Chujio's arm with astonishing strength. How do you know little uncle's name?" The corners of Yun Chujio's eyes twitched. This world was really small. But the problem came. According to what the mute girl said, Sha Wuhan was her little uncle. Then even if he was sent to the lowly domain, his elemental energy shouldn't be so low. Yun Chujio did not hide anything and immediately told her about her own matters. Then, she asked, "Young lady, according to what you said, if Brother Sha is your little uncle, although he is not as powerful as your uncle, he should not be bad. Why is his elemental energy so low?" The mute girl sighed and said, "Anyone who is sent must have their elemental energy crippled. I think that little uncle's elemental energy must have been crippled back then. Moreover, he might have survived because he was saved by a loyal servant. Otherwise, he would have died a long time ago." However, when the mute girl thought about her little uncle still being alive, she could not help but reveal a little joy. "Young lady, since you are the niece of the one who killed Big Brother, then your enmity shall be on me," Yun Chujio said heroically. The mute girl's expression stiffened. This seniority seemed to be somewhat chaotic. She called her little uncle Big Brother, yet she called her young lady. What was the meaning of this? However, hearing Yun Chujio's words, she was still very moved. "Qing Luo, no, little Jiu, I appreciate your kindness, but that Princess Mei Yan not only has the military power of the royal hunting squad in her hands, but she also has some masked guards by her side. Their elemental energy are all very strong. You are not their match. Everything depends on the person. However, are you really willing to kill your imperial father?" Yun Chujio asked somewhat uncertainly. The mute girl sneered, "Father? He doesn't have any father-daughter relationship with me at all. He just wants to resurrect Princess Mei Yan. Moreover, those babies were so innocent. As the ruler of a country, he killed them for his own ambition. He was worse than a beast. Even if I have to repay my parents' kindness, I have already used my previous body to pay them back. The current me has nothing to do with him." Yun Chujio nodded. This was not bad. If she was given some kind of stupid filial piety, she would have a headache. Chapter 44:23 Someone had arrived. "Miss, we need to plan this matter carefully. We need to plan it out properly." But don't worry, I will definitely help you take revenge, Yun Chujo said confidently. Although the mute girl was very touched, she did not have much confidence in herself. The two of them were only servants in the Royal Hunting Regiment's kitchen. How could they possibly go against Princess Mayenne? Not only did Princess Mayenne have the support of the royal family, but she also had the royal hunting team. She also had the masked guards in her hands, not to mention that she was about to marry the crown prince of the Yen clan. Such a difference in strength was like the difference between heaven and earth. Would it work? Yun Chujo also knew what to say now. The mute girl probably would not believe that she could help her take revenge. There was no rush. She would believe it sooner or later. At this time, the sky had completely turned dark. Yun Chujo thought for a moment. It was dark, and it would be dangerous to drag her up. She should wait until dawn. However, the two of them didn't stay idle. They used their machetes to cut a lot of vines. They used the night time to connect the vines together and save them for the next day. At this moment, Buttface, who was in Yun Chujia's origin beast bag, reminded her, "Little fairy, someone is coming down from above." Yun Chujo was shocked. Why would someone come down? Didn't they say that no one dared to approach Gui Jiancho? In a moment of desperation, she put the 4 corpses and the cut vines into her storage ring, then dragged the mute girl and ran into the depths of the valley. The mute girl didn't understand, but she knew that Yun Chujo wouldn't harm her, so she didn't say anything and ran along with Yun Chujo. Yun Chujo saw a dent in the stone wall on the left, so she immediately let the mute girl jump on it. The dent was only enough for one person to hide. Just as the mute girl was wondering what Yun Chujo would do, she was surprised to find that Yun Chujo had turned into a lush vine that completely blocked her figure. The impact that the mute girl had suffered was imaginable. When she thought of the cloud that had saved her, she instantly understood that it should be Yun Chujo. Just as the mute girl's heart was in turmoil, the sound of footsteps and voices came from afar. "Princess, you have already captured more than 80 of the Purine women that you need. Give me 1 more month, and I will definitely be able to gather 100 people. Bring me there to take a look." Yun Chujo cursed in her heart. This damned old witch was probably going to use some sorcery again, so she had to follow her to take a look. Therefore, after those people had gone far away, she said to the mute girl, "Miss, you stay here and don't make a sound. I'll go and take a look." The mute girl was about to stop her when she saw Yun Chujo turn into a wisp of mist and float forward. The mute girl could only pray to the gods and Buddhas in her heart, hoping that Yun Chujo would be safe and sound. Yun Chujo quickly caught up with those people and turned into a small blade of grass that fell on a person's hair. Yun Chujo found that apart from Princess Mayenne, everyone else was wearing a mask. They took a few turns and arrived in front of a stone wall. They took out jade tokens and opened the restriction to enter. When another stone door was opened, Yun Chujo saw that there were dozens of young girls locked in the stone room. They were probably the Purine girls that the person mentioned. Those girls looked dull, as if they had been fed some medicine. They did not have any reaction when they saw Princess Mayenne and the others. They still looked dull. Princess Mayenne raised a woman's chin with her hand, and her long nails instantly drew a few bloody marks on the woman's face. She said coldly, "As expected, you're young and delicate, not as good as this damn body of mine." Chapter 44-24 Spirit Locking Pearl. Yun Chujo could not help but be puzzled. What did Princess Mayenne mean by her words? Didn't she possess Princess Mayenne's body? Why was she not young anymore? At this moment, Princess Mayenne cut the faces of a few other women. She said coldly, "It's all that damn bitch's fault. I didn't expect it to be the legendary 4 souls and 7 spirits. I don't know if the extra soul is dead or hiding somewhere, but there has been no news. If I can't devour the extra soul, even if I use the blood pool to cultivate, I can't maintain my current appearance. It's really detestable." A masked guard said, "Princess, you don't have to worry. As long as I gather all the people and pour their blood into the blood pool, you won't look old anymore. Also, isn't the royal hunting group already helping you collect the items on the list? As long as you have those items, you will recover your strength very quickly. Princess Mei snorted coldly, they are all a bunch of trash. The people from the royal hunting group had only found a few things. If it wasn't for the fact that they couldn't find the items and that they couldn't maintain their appearance, why would I postpone the wedding date? Yun Chuji's heart moved. No wonder the wedding date was delayed. It was because there was something wrong with this old witch's appearance. After Princess Mei finished speaking, she left the stone room and entered another stone room. As soon as the stone door was opened, Yun Chujo smelled a strong smell of blood. She looked up and saw a pool filled with blood. She did not know if there was an array formation or something added inside, but it was bubbling. Princess Mei did not avoid the guards at all. She took off her clothes and walked into the blood pool. She could not say that there was nothing. There was a bright red bead hanging around her neck. She did not know what effect it had. Princess Mei entered the blood pool and said with a seductive smile, "How do you think my current appearance is compared to the past?" The guard who spoke earlier immediately said, "Princess, beauty lies in the bones, not in the skin. Even if this bodice appearance is not as beautiful as your previous appearance, as long as you possess it, it will be peerless. No one can compare." Yun Chujo thought to herself, this guard is a talent. His ability to suck up to others is really good. Princess Mei was obviously very pleased, but she sighed and said, "What's the use of being beautiful? Didn't the Lord still ignore me?" Yun Chujo thought to herself, that's right, how could her pretty boy take a fancy to such an old witch? However, I heard from Aog that the Lord appeared in the Dark Continent before, but it seems that he has been reincarnated. Shengzun, you have to be careful. As long as I take the opportunity to enter the Dark Continent by marrying Aog, I will have a chance to tie the Lord tightly by my side, and I can also hold the Yen clan in my hands. Yun Chujo cursed in her heart. What a shameless old hag. She actually still coveted her pretty boy. Sooner or later, she would be tortured to death. After a while, Princess Mei stroked the red bead on her neck and said, "Do you really think there's someone who can change his form at will? Could it be that that person was lying to me?" "Princess, whether it's true or not, as long as he activates the spirit-locking bead with essence energy, he won't be able to change his form within 1,000 feet. Even if you don't activate it with essence energy, you only need to wear this spirit-locking pearl. He won't be able to transform within 3 feet of you again, so you don't have to worry," said the guard who spoke earlier. Yun Chuji's heart trembled. The red pearl on this old witch's neck was actually the spirit-locking pearl. Fortunately, she did not act rashly. Otherwise, she would definitely die a horrible death. Chapter 44-25 gave the old witch a hard time. Yun Chujo could not help but feel lucky that the guard she was hiding in was not very popular, so she was quite far away from Princess Mei. Otherwise, she would not have been able to turn from a light fog into a blade of grass. However, this old witch had the spirit-locking pearl on her, so it would be difficult to kill her with her abnormal physique. She had thought that it would not be difficult to deal with this old witch, but now it seemed very difficult. It seemed that she had to take a long time to plan. Princess Mei soaked in the blood pool for about 2 hours before she came out. Yun Chujo found that there was not a single trace of blood on her body, and her appearance was much more beautiful than before. Princess Mei took out a mirror and looked at it for a long time without any clothes on. She said with satisfaction, "The effect of the blood pool is really good. We will come back in half a month." After the guards complimented her, Princess Mei put on her clothes and led the guards out of the cave. Yun Chujo remembered that the mute girl was still hanging on the stone wall. She had to quickly turn into a vine to cover herself. Otherwise, it would be terrible if the old witch found out. Fortunately, the guard she was hiding with had been walking at the back. She landed lightly in the grass and turned into a light mist. Then, she quickly passed Princess Mei and the others and turned into a vine at the place where the mute girl was hiding. The mute woman finally let out a sigh of relief when she saw Yun Chujo return. However, she did not dare to make a sound as she was afraid that she would be discovered. She tried her best to conceal her aura so that she would not be discovered. A moment later, Princess Mayenne and the others came over. They did not sense anything unusual and quickly disappeared. Yun Chujo was afraid that those people would return or that there was something fishy going on. She turned into a mist again and followed them. Only when she realized that those people had climbed up the rope did she confirm that they had really left. However, it was also true that no one would come to Ghost's Grimace, so they naturally would not be worried that their secret would be discovered. Yun Chujo recalled that the mute girl had mentioned that there was once a small team in the royal hunting group that had lost track of Ghost's Grimace. When she thought about the blood pool, she thought that those people had probably been killed by Princess Mayenne. This old witch was really ruthless and extremely perverted. Although she did not have the strength to deal with the old witch now, it was still not bad to give her some trouble. Hence, she asked the mute girl to wait for her on the stone wall while she returned to the stone wall from before. Although there was no jade token, this cave did not have any powerful array formation. Yun Chujo immediately floated in through the cracks. Yun Chujo first floated into the stone room with the blood pool and transformed into an ordinary-looking young girl. Then, she took out some medicinal powder from her storage ring and smiled sinisterly as she sprinkled it into the blood pool. Didn't that old witch want to stay young forever? She would turn her into a toad that could not be seen. The moment she thought of Princess Mayan's frightened and angry look, the smile on this fellow's face became even more sinister. After Yun Chujo sprinkled the medicinal powder, she finally arrived at the stone room where the girls were imprisoned. Although these girls had been poisoned, it was not a poison that was difficult to cure. Moreover, Hei Shinjo had Go Weiba, so the poison was never a problem for her. Yun Chujo took out some herbs, crushed them, and poured the juice into the girls. The girls were at a loss at first, then sobbed. Yun Chujo frowned. Why are you crying? Is crying useful? If you want to live, shut up. The girls did not dare to make a sound, and looked at Yun Chujo nervously. Chapter 44-26, The Red Skeleton Kowtowing. Listen up. Princess Mayenne has been possessed by Princess Mayenne. Because you are purine women, you were captured and used to maintain her appearance. If you want to live, find a hidden place to hide after you go out. Don't get caught again. Otherwise, I won't have time to come and save you a second time, Yun Chujo said coldly. The girls more or less knew the truth from the guards, so they nodded their heads when they heard Yun Chujo's words. Yun Chujo continued, if the real Princess Mayenne picks up the big flag and fights with Princess Mayenne, I hope you can come out and testify about Princess Mayen's crimes. The girls promised that they would do it. Yun Chujo did not expect that they would all come out and testify. However, as long as some of them came out to testify, it would be enough. At least, it would allow the mute girl to stand on the moral high ground. However, the question that was placed in front of Hei Shinjo was, how to bring these girls out. If the ghost talisman was used, it would create too much of a commotion. This guy could only force Black Bead to help. Black Bead was rarely cooperative and helped Yun Chujo find the core of the array. After Yun Chujo closed the formation, she let the girls out and told them to wait 2 miles away. The girls did not dare to disobey and immediately walked 2 miles away. Only then did Yun Chujo enter the cave. After opening the formation, she once again turned into a light mist and floated out. This fellow was just about to go and meet the girls when he heard the sounds of fighting coming from ahead. Yun Chujo's heart sank. Could it be that Princess Mayan's people had returned? She hurriedly leaped over, only to discover that those young girls were fighting with some vampire bats. Those young girls had been locked up for a very long time, and their physical strength was exhausted. Their origin energy had not completely recovered. Fortunately, there were many of them, so they did not suffer any losses. Yun Chujo instructed them to disperse those vampire bats. At this moment, the mute girl also rushed over. However, she had always been cautious, and her face was covered by a veil. The mute girl was a little confused when she saw so many people. Furthermore, Yun Chujo had changed her appearance, so she did not recognize her. She could not help but worry. It was only when she saw Yun Chujo winking at her that she heaved a sigh of relief. She knew that Yun Chujo had changed her appearance again. Yun Chujo was about to leave with the girls when she suddenly stopped. Something was not right. Weren't those vampire bats unique to the Ghost Abyss? Why did they come to Demon's Grimace? Yun Chujo thought about it. It was still early in the morning anyway. She wanted to see what was going on. Hence, she brought the mute girl and the girls and chased after the vampire bats. They walked all the way to the end of the valley and saw a black cliff with many vampire bats lying on it. Yun Chujo saw the black cliff and had an idea. Previously, in order to avoid scamming it, the bone spirit suddenly disappeared with the inheritance prison. Could it have run here? Yun Chujo touched her chin and her eyes were full of bright light. It was a black cliff and vampire bats. It was most likely the inheritance prison. Immediately, she ordered the girls to disperse the vampire bats on the cliff. Bonehead, we're going to meet again. I'm a little excited. At this moment, the red skeleton in the inheritance prison was already trembling. Although Yun Chujo had changed her appearance, the red skeleton could still recognize her. It was as if it was a dog that was crying in its heart. It had already run to the Imperial region. It had already run to Demon's Grimace. How could it still meet this pervert? The red skeleton knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Oh heavens, oh earth. Hopefully, this pervert did not have the ripple flower in his hands. This way, she would not be able to make the archway appear, and she would not be able to come in and find trouble. Chapter 44-27 Female Bandit. The red skeleton soon fell apart. That was because it saw Yun Chujo take out a lot of ripple flowers and let the women mash them up before smearing them on the black cliff wall. Yun Chujo saw the arch on the black cliff wall and couldn't help but curl the corner of her mouth. Never to see it again. Bonehead, what a coincidence. They were going to meet again. The mute girl looked at the arch on the black cliff in surprise. How did little Joe know that the flower's juice could make the arch appear? Wait for me outside. I'll be out soon. As Yun Chujo said this, she stuffed a bunch of ghost talismans into the mute girl's hands. She wasn't afraid that these women would get greedy because without her help, they wouldn't be able to leave this ghostly sorrow. The mute girl nodded. She had seen how Yun Chujo could change her form at will, so she was not worried that she would be in danger. After Yun Chujo finished making the arrangements, she took out the jade token and walked in. When Yun Chujo saw the words Prison of Inheritance, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Bone Spirit, you sure have guts. Not only did you sneak away, but you also left me a message. You are courting death. The red skeleton was already on the verge of tears. If it knew that it would meet this little demon again, it would definitely have left quietly without taking a single cloud with it. However, there was no medicine for regret in this world. It stammered, well, little lady, I am just playing with you. Stop talking nonsense and let me in quickly. Otherwise, I will blow up the door of your prison of inheritance. Yun Chujo said impatiently. Although the red skeleton was unwilling, it could only let in those who came in with the jade token. Therefore, Yun Chujo entered the inheritance prison for the third time. Bone Spirit, do you want me to blow up your skulls layer by layer, or do you want me to go to the 18th floor? Don't talk nonsense about only going to the 18th floor when the time is up. I will give you 3 numbers. If you don't get me to the 18th floor, I will start smashing golden eggs. The red skeleton was about to cry. How was this a challenge? This was a fucking female bandit. However, it couldn't do anything to her. Moreover, it was certain that if it didn't do as she said, this troublemaker would really smash the skull into pieces. Thus, the miserable red skeleton directly teleported Yun Chujo to the 18th floor. Just as the red skeleton was about to start the inheritance test, Yun Chujo frowned and said, "Alright, what's there to test?" I've already seen the ghost talismans on the 1,000 talismans. Your test is also a waste of time. Let me ask you, other than the various inheritances, do you have anything special here? If you give me that special thing, I'll leave. I have a lot of things to do. I don't have time to waste with you. The red skeleton that was scolded like a grandson heard Yun Chujia's words and immediately stammered, I am in the inheritance prison. Where would there be anything special? Little grandaunt, I'll give you some origin tools and pills. Please leave quickly. Otherwise, those people outside will be anxious. Yun Chujio sneered, Bone Spirit, you've already lied to me once. If you still don't behave this time, I'll find your hiding place and beat you to a pulp. Although the red skeleton was a little scared, it felt that it was impossible for Yun Chujio to find its hiding place. Therefore, it cried and said, Little ant, I really don't have that special thing that you said. You'd better leave quickly. Chapter 44-28, Special Item. It would be a miracle if Yun Chujio believed it. She was certain that the red skeleton was hiding on the 18th floor, but where was it hiding? The red skeleton saw Yun Chujio's gaze sweeping back and forth. It could not help but kneel on the ground again, praying to the gods and Buddhas, hoping to avoid this disaster. Yun Chujio swept her gaze around and did not find any flaws. The red skeleton could not help but heave a sigh of relief. As it said, she could not find it at all. Who would have thought that Yun Chujio's gaze would suddenly stop at one spot, and she said faintly, Bone Spirit, do you need me to invite you out? When the red skeleton saw Yun Chujio looking straight at it, it immediately felt like dying. How did she find out? This pervert. Yun Chujio naturally found out by relying on the black bead. It had to be said that the black bead's performance was very good recently, and it was worthy of praise. The red skeleton cried, Little lady, it's not that I don't want to give it to you, but if that thing were to appear in this world, it would attract a disaster. So, I can't give it to you. Yun Chujio blinked her eyes, then can you at least lend it to me to take a look? Anyway, if you don't teleport, I won't be able to leave. What are you afraid of? The red skeleton whined for a while more before finally taking out a jade box and throwing it to Yun Chujio. I'm not trying to scare you. This thing really can't appear in this world. You can just take a look at it. After you're done, return it to me. Yun Chujio couldn't be bothered with it. She opened the jade box curiously and wanted to see what it was. The moment the jade box was opened, the thing entered Yun Chujio's mouth before Yun Chujio could take a closer look. The red skeleton let out a roar and immediately jumped out without concealing itself. It pointed at Yun Chujio and said, You actually swallowed that thing? Spit it out. Yun Chujio spread out her hands. I'm sorry, it has already been digested. It's impossible to spit it out. Yun Chujio had already seen that thing when she used her inner vision to look at her dantian. It turned out that it was a black bead that was the same as the 2 beads that were swallowed by the Tao Tai Ghost Market. In the end, it was naturally swallowed by the black bead. No wonder the black bead acted so cooperatively. It turned out that one would not wake up early without benefits. Damn it, she knew that these scammers were all scheming dogs. She counted with her fingers again. The black bead had already swallowed 4 beads. Could it be that it was going to gather 7 beads to summon the dragon god? However, forget about the dragon god. The little lecherous dragon that the gigolo took in was useless. When the red skeleton saw that Yun Chujio was determined not to return the beads, it immediately burst into tears. You pervert. You devil. We agreed to just watch. Why did you swallow it? Yun Chujio kicked it with her foot. Get lost. If you continue to dawdle, I'll swallow you too. The red skeleton immediately stopped howling. This pervert would be fine even if he swallowed the bead. Perhaps he could really swallow it too. It was better not to provoke her. Moreover, everything was predetermined. Since the bead had already been swallowed by her, it was better to quickly send this disaster away. Just as the red skeleton was about to teleport Yun Chujo away, it saw Yun Chujo say with a smile, "Bone spirit, let's discuss something." When the red skeleton saw Yun Chujo smile like a wolf with a big tail, it immediately had a bad feeling. It felt that what Yun Chujo was going to say was definitely not a good thing, but it still stuttered and asked, "What? What is it? What is it?" Chapter 44-29 Swore to never obey. Do you see those girls outside? They have nowhere to go now. If that old witch, Princess Mei Yan, finds out, they will die. I thought about it, hiding in your inheritance prison is the safest place. Anyway, the old witch can't enter without a jade token. The red skeleton immediately understood what Yun Chujo meant. Did she treat this place as a sanctuary? Outrageous. Only a pervert like her would come up with such a perverted idea. How awesome was the inheritance prison? How could she treat it as a sanctuary? Don't even think about it. You don't have to say it. I won't agree to it. Even if you smash me into a pile of bones, I won't agree to it. The red skeleton said as if he was ready to die. Qi Ling also had a bottom line. Humph, it would never agree to it even if it died. Yun Chujo snorted coldly. Bone spirit, I originally thought that Qi Ling like you was more high-end than other Qi Ling, but now I see that it's just so. The red skeleton was instantly attracted by the words, high-end, high-end. It moved closer to Yun Chujo and asked, Little Grandaunt, why did you think that I was high-end, high-end? Yun Chujo glanced at it and said, because you were afraid that the bead would bring disaster to the ghost region, so you have been guarding that bead. It can be said that you are taking the lives of the people as your responsibility. It is really admirable. Qi Ling, you are not a tool spirit. The red skeleton said. Normal tool spirits only know how to calculate some small profits. How can there be such a big scheme like yours? Compared to you, the other tool spirits are all flirtatious and cheap. They are not comparable to you at all. The red skeleton instantly felt comfortable. It was too comfortable. Every bone seam was extremely comfortable. That's right. How could those flirtatious bitches be compared to it? Qi Ling was not an ordinary Qi Ling. It was a Qi Ling that took the lives of the people as its own responsibility. Bone spirit, I did think so before, but you actually refused to temporarily protect those young girls. This has really let me down. Once Princess Mei Yan, that old witch, obtains these girls, she will not age. She will use her beauty to collude with the Yen clan, and she will bring disaster to the common people. Before Yun Chujo could finish her words, the red skeleton said righteously, Stop talking, I've decided to take them in. I was just teasing you just now. How can a tool spirit like me, who cares about the world, just sit back and do nothing? Qi Ling laughed. Just let them in later. Leave the rest to me. Yun Chujo was secretly happy, but she said on the surface, Bone spirit, I told you. You don't look like a Qi Ling who just stands by and does nothing. There are benefits to taking them in. If you have nothing to do, let them dance for you and sing a little song. It can also relieve your loneliness, right? Yes. The bone spirit thought about it and agreed. After all, it wouldn't do much to let them stay for a period of time. It would also be good to earn a good reputation. Yun Chujo and the red skeleton had finished their discussion. Only then did they let the red skeleton teleport her out. Yun Chujo looked at the girls and said, You guys can hide inside temporarily. This way, you won't be afraid of Princess Mine's pursuit. There's a lot of food in this storage ring. It's enough for you to last for half a year. When I need you guys, I'll come find you guys. These girls were eager to have a shelter, so they immediately thanked her profusely. Yun Chujo thought that according to the behavior of the bone spirit, it would be necessary to torture these girls. Although they would not lose their lives, they would not stop either. She hoped that they would not break down. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.